Welcome everyone to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club, now in 1080p because StreamYard raised their rates and we have 1080p now. So there you go. Enjoy us in crystal clear pixels, my friends. How y'all doing today? I'm not bitter at all. Oh, before we get started, I just want to wish a happy 50th birthday to our second commander-in-chief here, Alan Colson.
Oh,
The professor. Happy
Nice.
birthday, brother. You're probably not watching, but cheers, man. You've made it. You made it this far. We love you, and we'll see you Friday. And Kellen, how does it feel to be in 1080p?
oh, I thought I knew who I was, but thanks to this brand new resolution through StreamYard, I see myself in a whole new light. Thank you.
I'm just making it rain here at Heavy Metallurgy. We'll pay for all the bells and whistles. Anyway,
If anyone knows Heavy Metallurgy, you're here for the incredible production quality, so we can all yes. Man, I'm so behind and lost right now, but let's go for it. So, yeah, I tuned in last week for Dennis and Rick joining to help you talk about albums for the fall, and so I grabbed just a couple that have come through the past, I guess, year for me that I haven't listened to, and I thought I'd bring out.
you're welcome, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.
Take it all in. Take all the sexiness in. It's something to behold.
Yeah. So this is last year order list from France's Vehemence, kind of medieval castle-y black metal. That's your kind of deal.
Oh, dude, I've heard that too. Marty Jake turned me on to that a long time ago. I gotta listen to that again. It's been a long time, man. What do you think of that, Kellen?
Yeah, this band's awesome. This might be my favorite in their catalog. They've definitely got some sing-songy sort of French folk thing going on as well, but I'm all for that. So anyway, beyond that, here's another one. I guess this band it's Russian, but if you pronounce it Rye. This album is called Everything. This is kind of post-metal. I guess the closest thing I would say is like somewhere between Funeral Doom and Cascadian black metal, but definitely fall listening for me. And classic fall record I pull out, going over a decade strong for me. This is The Wounded Kings with Shadow Over Atlantis. So I love this record, and 100% every fall mandatory listen over here at Killing for Company. Yes.
All right.
That's all I got for you.
And also go check out his Kellen's wife Corinne is on the new episode of Killing for Company. Go check that out. I'll be watching that tonight before I go to bed. Also, congratulations to Logan and his lady. They're getting married tomorrow. That's why we're a three-piece tonight. I didn't bring anyone in.
Life milestones happening here on Heavy Metallurgy.
So much stuff happening, all in 1080p. It's so, this is, thank you, StreamYard, again for, God, this is wonderful. Anyway, Jim, how are you today, my friend? Not bitter at all.
Doing good. It is as fall as it gets here in Florida. We've had so much rain, and like it rained all Memorial Day weekend and all that kind of stuff, mostly. But it definitely, for what it is, it kind of put me into the mood. So I kind of too went that road. And so first, good old Panopticon, the Rhyme of Memory. Marty knows this guy well.
So do you. So do you. Yeah.
Could be. This is put out on Byron. If you don't have it yet, you should. But yeah, definitely, this is a great season to be listening to this music. Of course, winter is as well. But awesome album. Everybody knows about this. Nothing else can be said. And another thing that I like this time of year is a little bit old Dissection. And this is the Somberlin. And, we all know that the other album gets all the love, but I really like the Summerlin too, man. I think there's some
Mhm.
really beautiful melodies on this one too. Some great guitar playing, you know. So good old D section there, and for something that's a little more evil, well, I don't know about more evil, but just good old
Mm.
incantation, Mortal
Mhm.
Throne of Nazarene. This one's actually my favorite. I know a lot of people, it's all about Onward to Golgotha, but I think this album's just better, man. I think the songwriting is really improved, and just for me, it's just catchier, more memorable. So yeah, it was a lot of fun returning to this today. Well, all this stuff, but so yeah, that was on my listenings.
All right. Well, I was dinking around in the office here, and there's been a box sitting over there for a long time on top of another box. I thought that's just a box of old overstocked distro CDs that nobody wants. I said, I should remind myself what's in there. Opened it up, and it is a box full of promos from the Worm Gear days, like from 2007 to 2010 in particular, are the dates. So it's like a time capsule. I haven't opened the box since then. So I've been digging through that. Been spinning some of the stuff. Maniac Butchers Massacre, kind of a fun. The guys from Czech Republic, someplace like that, or Serbia, or something. I don't know. Chechnya, I guess it's called now. I don't know. They're weird. I've never really loved the band, but yeah, it's been fun. A little sloppy, but well produced. Good album. Meebix Redux, 3-song EP with remakes of older tracks. Good production. Sounds remarkably good. These were not in the box, but I've also been spinning. I think this is the first full-length Frontline Assembly album, State of Mind. Most of it's pretty simplistic for them. This is mostly stuff written by Bill Lee, but Reese Fulber is mentioned in the liner notes, but not really a member of the band at this point. So Bill Lee left Skinny Puppy early on and started Frontline Assembly, and it's been enjoyable. I got this cheap off of eBay. And lastly, been listening to Temple of Shadows by Angra. I've got a handful of Angra CDs, and this is probably the most aggressive, most Euro power metal-y inspired. In fact, Kai Hansen sings on a couple of these tracks, so there's your Halloween reference. Everybody drink. Good album. I enjoy it. It's good stuff. Yeah. And tonight's album, I used to have on vinyl, and I dug through my collection. I must have misfiled it. Then I remembered halfway through that I ended up giving it away. So tonight we're discussing, can't remember the name of the album, Living Deaths Protected from Reality, and a little bit of info regarding the band. Living Death was a German speed metal, thrash metal band from Velbert, noted for being one of the pioneering bands in the thrash metal genre. The band's career spanned from the early 1980s until the early 1990s, and has since acquired a cult status. They're formed in 81 in Velbert, North Rhine-Westphalia. Let me see. Okay. Talks about who joined, when they joined. They recorded their self-titled demo, resulting in a deal with Earthshaker in 1983. Later that year, Frank Schubert left the band and was replaced. Okay, we're not going to talk about who was in and who was out. But yeah. First impressions, Jim.
Yeah, man. Definitely very speed metal-y German thrash metal, which that's great. I love that stuff. And I think it kind of, amped up. Lost my page here. I amped up the interest factor for me on it. I I wrote down vocals like Udo's getting his balls crushed.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the images I had, and then another one was dude from Exodus getting strangled. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of Destruction, how they like to live on the higher end of the register in terms of just overall sound, production, vocals, all that kind of stuff. But in some ways a little more playfulness, even though the first song is called "Horrible Infanticide." It's a little hard to take it too seriously though when their last song is about a German dish called Eisbein mit Sauerkraut.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely a fun spin. I'd say mostly highs. There's some lows. We'll talk about that, but yeah, I think right away this kind of stuff, it's up my alley. So it was enjoyable.
All right. Well, Kellen picked it, so I'll go next. You know what? I see why I got rid of this, because it's a frustrating album for me because the music is so good. It's very much in its time period for what it's doing, and it's in a geographical location that I love for thrash metal, especially from this era. And the vocals kind of make it hard. I struggled. There'd be like, I hate them. Next time I listen to it, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's okay. I don't mind the vocals as much. Then I hate it again. I'm just back and forth constantly. It's like, never have I been so frustrated over an album that's so good. You know what I mean? Because it's a really solid, well-written, very of its time period, German thrash / speed. I think people are asking, so is this thrash or speed early on in the chat? I think it's more speed metal, but it definitely jumps the tracks a bit. So yeah, it's an album I'm looking forward to talk about, and I'm kind of regret getting rid of it because it is really good. I've really enjoyed listening to it, but man, there's some shit about it that really bugs me. What about you, Kellen?
So this is one of those records, like just the album cover. So when you see a record like this, it looks like you can tell it's got some ring wear, whatever. It looks like a record that's been partied on a little bit by a
Mine
metalhead.
did too. Yeah.
And that, for some reason, I'm like, okay, this person obviously, what goes through my head is they know what they're listening to. They love this genre. They played it to death, and they had a hard time letting it go. Like, that's essentially the thought process I have. Then, like, what is happening down here? So all these things about the album cover is this weird sort of this kid playing with his younger child. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but then there's like a Bushido, like Japanese warrior that he's got holding on to. Like, I'm completely anyway, this screamed like, okay, this is interesting metal from I'm guessing the 80s. Pull out my phone. Yeah, it's 87. Because it's been, the cover has been worn and everything, I found it at a decent price, and I was like, yeah, I'm whatever, taking it home with me. This sounds gonna be good, right? And it's just I agree, it's very much I would pick speed metal first. If I had to pick a genre between the two. And I need more of that. I like kind of amassing more and more from this time period because I think thrash gets so much more attention. But I don't think speed metal when I think Germany either. So, and there's some thrash or whatever, but to Jim's point, the register on this record is on the higher end, which I also associate with speed metal in terms of an overall sound. We'll get into the vocals and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. It's a weird album cover that turned out to actually have great music on it. Yeah. Which I love that combo, right? You can't go wrong there. So I was pleasantly surprised, and we'll kind of get into the rest of it after that.
That's a good comparison, Devin, but I would say that Beeler, what was his name? Beeler, the singer from Exciter, the drummer. He sang in key though. He screamed in key, but they're very similar. It's a good comparison for sure. Really though, it's funny that Living Death, I've heard people talk about him. Back in the day, I never really got into him. I never really heard of him. I mean, why wasn't this band the band? They seem to be in the right place at the right time. They've got a sound that suits where they're at quite well. What was the thing that held this band back? Was it the label they were on? Was it the the friend group they ran around with? Were they not friends with the right bands? Was it Thorsten Bergmann's vocals? What do you guys think was the catalyst for this band kind of being obscure? Jim, we'll start with you.
Sorry, I was reading some crazy lyrics from that first album. I was like, oh my God. I'll just say it's called Riding a Virgin. And I'll say, oh my God. I was gonna like bring it up, but I'm like, no, I'm not gonna bring it up after I read the
Demonetized. There we go.
Yeah, who cares? Money's no object here on StreamYard.
And
Pay top of the line.
you can join it.
1080p.
There we go.
That's right.
we will skip that. So, okay, what was the question? Say it again. What am I?
Why wasn't this band bigger?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's the vocals, man. I think they're really tough to take. Not for me. I like the crazy off the wall screeching insanity, but when you think about the other, even the other German bands that were coming out this time, there was a lot of higher register stuff going on, but these guys are like, this dude's way up there, man. He's like got the needle on peak there, for the trouble, so I think that it might have just been, really difficult, for some people to kind of get over. But I will say, when I was listening to their older album, there's a little bit more enunciation going on, like a little bit more almost kind of like singing, you know what I mean? Like, so that kind of like deflates my own argument a little bit there, like this is the one that sounds unhinged, protected from reality to me. Like, the previous album, not so much. And I didn't check out Vengeance of Hell, the first one, just Metal Revolution, but yeah, I mean, my guess would be, the only thing I can think of is that it would be the vocals, because stylistically, it's right there on the money. Yeah, these guys are, I'd say more speed metal. I'd say it's like a 60 or 55-45 split speed metal to thrash here. It's really close, but maybe that's what it was. Maybe, because they lean more into, that style that came before. I think Maze of Torment said maybe like the German Exciter. Maybe I think it was a great way to describe it. But they're definitely more thrashier than Exciter. But at the same time, there is a lot of that there, where it's like a rolling double bass. It's constant. There are time changes in their sound. There's even like a little bit of odd time in one song for a minute. But for the most part, though, it's kind of like like the riffs kind of just flow into each other. I like that, but maybe when, we've got, Sodom and Creator and stuff like that coming out very shortly thereafter or right around the same time, maybe that's sort of like just a little bit more brutality was more appealing to people. But, whatever the reason, I think it's super solid, man. And I think it definitely stands on its own 2 feet. So that's my take.
All right, Colin, your thoughts.
So I love the vocals. So we'll get to that in the songwriting portion, though. This came out on ARG Records. So I don't know what kind of distribution that label had back in 86.
Let's see what they even had on there. Let's see. Bulldozer, Holy Moses, Lunatics Without Skateboards, Mekong Delta. So yeah, stuff that didn't really hit.
Right.
Target was another one.
Well, those are like pretty like cultish, right? Like bands. Bulldozer,
Yeah.
I don't think, when you think the number big thrash bands or big speed metal bands, speed metal, but also by 1987, sort of the things that started to turn. We have the same kind of conversation with Infernal Majesty, which, had a better, being in Canada, I think was probably a little bit better known, but by 87, I think this extreme metal, either thrash is becoming more polished and more extreme, or death metal is starting to creep into the scene. Like, I think that was what was going on at the time. This band also, there's a little bit of like tongue in cheek going on, right? Like, there's an element of humor here that I think derails what could potentially be perceived as like, you know, a extreme speed metal band. I don't think that works in their favor. So they may just if I have to pick one thing, it's probably distribution and record label. Even like Holy Moses, I don't think had the same kind of recognition that they probably deserve.
I never even saw Holy Moses album in the shops back then. I don't,
Right.
you know, I still don't own a Holy Moses album,
Right.
which is
And
sad because it's pretty killer.
it's
You know.
great stuff. Same thing with like Bulldozer, incredibly influential band, but I just think they're kind of lower down the totem pole. So, well, we'll get into the vocals and the songwriting stuff later on, but for me, this band is one that probably suffers from distribution and sort of the time period in which they really sort of reach their stride, if you will. So, I think that's really holding them back. German thrash by 87. Like, you think of the other huge bands, what Creator is doing, what Sodom is doing. And then Tankard was just kind of being Tankard, right? You have to go all in if you're going to be Tankard and enjoy it, or you can't just kind of play in that space. So,
well, it was such a pack. I mean, you had Death Row, you had Destruction.
But like Death Row, right? Okay, so Destruction is another band that we can. I have never completely loved Destruction, so I may be in the minority there. But like, what was happening with Death Row at this time period, or Mekong Delta, which is those bands were doing much more challenging kind of music, and I think this, by comparison, is a little bit simplistic. So, as thrash metal had kind of become a bit more focused in specific sort of niches in sound by 1987, I don't think they strongly fit in any singular one.
Yeah, that's a good point. The fact that, you know, the thrash stuff, the techie side, or even Creator, the early Creator stuff, there was a rawness to it, an excitement to it. It felt like it was about to come off the rails at times. And you listen to this album, and it's very well considered. The songs are all together really well. There's great solo work. The transitions really flow. The songs are really well put together. For me, it's the two things. It's probably the distribution from ARG Records and the vocals. This, to me, is a King Diamond situation where people either love King or they hate King. This here, I'm kind of back and forth. It makes sense, but really the album is so well written and well done that I find the vocals a distraction. My ear keeps going to what he's doing and not paying attention to the songs as much. I really had to work or ignore him, which is difficult because he's up in like like Jim said, that ball sack skinning streak. You know, he's up in that register, and there's melodic moments. There's melodic moments happening in the music that a singer could even scream in key. That can happen. That can be a thing. He is like completely like separated from it. He's like doing his own thing is what it feels like. And he just happens to be starting and stopping at a certain point. So yeah, for me, the singer is a big deal, which is kind of a bummer because the album, I think, fits right in with what was happening in Germany without sounding like everybody else. There's one Paradox. I hear a little bit of Paradox in some of the riffage. The early Paradox, everybody tells me all the Paradox records are good. I only have the first two, and they rip. They're so good. What a great band. But Paradox had a singer that could sing in key, you know. So people are going to typically gravitate what is sonically pleasing to their ear most of the time, unless you start getting people that are more experimental avant-garde stuff, then that's not the case. But yeah, for me, it's the vocals and the record label. Let's talk about musicality and composition of Protected from Reality. Jim.
Man, I think these guys are just great musicians, man.
Totally.
The riffs are really, really cool. There's a good display of like note based riffs, like you like call them, some scales, and stuff on here. And, the drumming is awesome, man. I really feel like, this bass player and this drummer like are really locked in. There's cool moments on the galley. That's a very slow thrashy song, and at the beginning there's like, it's really brief, but there's kind of like this like odd time. No, it's not brief. It's really throughout the verse. It's like this odd time kind of thing that the bass and the drums are doing over what sounds like a kind of a simple guitar riff, but what the bass and the drummer are doing, just kind of like dun, 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 are doing this kind of like progressive type meter over this like seemingly simple riff. And it really like elevates that riff into something like a lot more interesting than it would have been without that. Like and that kind of like thought, process, from the rhythm section, shows that these guys they know what they're doing, and they know when to say like, hey, you know what, we could just like do a straight beat and follow this like, pretty typical, down picked riff, but no, we're going to just kind of play all around it and make it interesting. So, you got to know what you're doing here to do that. And I think it works super well. The vocals on the galley. Speaking of the King, Marty, I put the vocals here sound like a constipated King Diamond.
We're getting them all. They're sharing the same brain again.
Yeah. But yeah, man, and for me, like, the two Vengeance songs, like Horrible Infanticide and Vengeance, the part two, those there's a lot of great musicianship there. On that intro song, what I like, and yeah, it's a very much speed metal with some thrash element song, but just the way that the riffs just kind of blend and bleed right in together. You can give some of that up to the rolling double bass, like the kind of like propels it like most speed metal, but the riffs really do work together. Like they're not competing for the same space. They make sense when they kind of flow one to the other. And again, that kind of thing, it takes a lot of thought. It's kind of easy to stitch together riffs that like are very different, and it can be exciting to do that. Obviously we love that. We listen to, technical death metal and things like that, and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it can feel forced, where here, them kind of keeping the same tempo, but using different riffs over it, and then making sure that those riffs work together. Again, it takes thought, it takes skill, it takes, takes experience is really what it is. So yeah, there's great lead work on here. The leads are well phrased. There is a little bit Kirk Hammett heaviness on Nature's Death, which is like the one thing I don't like about that song. I was like, he's leaning a little too into Kirk there. It got really familiar, like the kind of like the fast bluesy pentatonic thing was like a little familiar, but balance that out with some very interesting pinch harmonics on the verses. They just seem kind of weird and out there and kind of like fading in the background. And I'm like, man, what a cool idea. It was totally unexpected. And again, they're taking like, what could have been some like, really standard type thrash or speed metal riffs, but doing these like these little flourishes that give it, an individual character. And I think that's what rises, their music, their musicality, to a higher level. These guys have great compositional skill, with the way that they put songs together. I do kind of see what Kellen's saying about, that sense of humor may have detracted from it a little bit. Just the overall vibe, keeps it kind of, from being, sinister to more some of the like the more kind of, this is, we're not talking about Anthrax here, but there is a little bit of like a tongue-in-cheek humor in here, and maybe if you're looking for something darker, you're going to be going to like Sodom and Early Creator instead. But the first song is called Horrible Infanticide, man. So these guys kind of like bounce back and forth between all these worlds. The vocals are yeah, you're right, Marty. He's just caterwauling, man. He doesn't care about staying in key or really anything like that. He's just kind of like, he's just going balls out, what I mean? And there are places where it doesn't work. And Intruder, I'm looking at you.
Oh yeah, that's on my notes too. Intruder, he's
But I think for the most part, though, I'm okay with it. I just feel like, especially hearing it on the older albums where he tried to sing, it's like he said, nah, I'm just gonna go completely punk rock and just like squeal.
Yeah.
So yeah, with varying degrees of success, but just talking about the music though, these guys shine.
all right, Kellen.
Okay, what the conclusion I'm coming to here is that either I've listened to too much or you've listened to too little Sirathungal. Because what I hear is Tim Baker all over this. That like forced vocals where he's like, I don't know if it's the limited range that he can operate in, but he's just like,
Well, if you sing in every key, then you're bound to hit it right once in a while.
It's like he has like his passion is sort of being squeezed out of a vocal toothpaste, just trying to get it out. And whatever comes out of that toothpaste, you got to roll with it. And for some reason, though, I kept on thinking that style makes more sense in this context than it does in epic heavy metal for me. Like, I think every time I listen to this band, I immediately go to Sirathungal and Tim Baker's sort of completely off the wall, pure passion. I don't know what note we're going for here, but you're going to feel it kind of delivery. And that's what I come away with. And I know I've just normalized and internalized this sort of vocal behavior, but I totally I had no problem with it, and I think makes a lot of sense within a speed metal context. So I have no complaints really on like how unruly and strange the vocals here. I think it actually works better than it does when you're trying to do, Michael Moorcock fantasy stuff. Beyond that, so can we talk? This is the thing, is like my potentially favorite track here is an instrumental and has an incredibly strange name, Wood of Necrophiliac. What is that supposed to mean?
Is that an erection?
I have no clue.
Wood.
That's what I was wondering too. Is it
Yeah.
like a piece of wood, my
Right.
wood, your wood, the wood?
Morning wood? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it completely undercuts what is curious, like interesting. So I listened to this album the first time through, and okay, yeah, it's fast, blazing speed metal. Like I get it, I'm on board, and I dig the sound. That track comes around when like the keys enter. I think this is a little bit something else is going on here.
I like the keyboards in that too. It adds something a little different than they hadn't really gotten to yet.
Oh, hey, I'm welcoming a little bit of different dimension into this. I'm on board.
Yeah, I think it's one of the highlights of the album, that instrumental, man.
Right. Yeah. But then it has one of the strange, I don't know what that name is supposed to be. And it doesn't make me feel like, oh, what an interesting, mysterious track. It's like, are they trying to make a joke about someone gets an erection having sex with dead people? Like, what is the, I don't know what the story is. So, but I loved that track. I thought it was such an interesting sort of, in terms of style choice. Now, unlike Intruder, I enjoyed that track, but specifically, there's a part where the drummer and the rest of the bass player guitarist do this thing where the riff is sort of creeping up the fretboard, and the drummer's doing this like snare roll, and they jump off and then they jump into like this palm muted and lock sync. The drummer throws in double kicks to match it, and then they recycle it. They go back. There's this cool little trade-off there where you don't feel them sort of necessarily flexing their thrash muscle throughout the entirety of this listen, but they kind of give you glimpses of it. And I think that's, in terms of the speed metal, thrash metal balance, I really like that. I very much agree with the galley moment there. The back end of this record, so once we get to the Necrophiliac track and we move to side B of this album, that galley, when it's this interesting sort of like mid-paced open, slow moving riff thing. For a speed metal band, I think that's a interesting sort of skill to have. To your point, Marty, about Paradox, those early Paradox, and people kept on talking about the influence that Metallica had on those records. And there's
especially the first one.
Yeah, especially the first one. And there's parts of this band that feel like the thing that should not be like crept into this album a little bit. In terms of like slower, heavier, sort of thrashy parts. So I hear that at times on this record. Like I said, because I'm down with the vocals here, there's far less barrier of entry to really appreciate their songwriting style and sort of talents. The one, we'll get to my least favorite track here, but to bear my name here, the sauerkraut. The one joke on this record, there's like a weird bass line on the closing track.
It's sort of like do
yeah,
polka, like fun. Yeah, here comes the funny.
Yeah. You can tell it's them just.
They never capitalize on it though. They just throw that in there, and it goes back into the trash. Yeah.
Yes, and I just keep on feel like it detracts from the entirety of the listen. Like, why make fun of yourself when you have such a killer record potentially? Anyway, I thought it was a strange way to close the record, and undercuts, I think, taking this album a little bit more seriously, but cool songwriting for sure.
Right on. For me, musicality and composition. I have very little complaints about that. I think side A is way better than side B. Side B, The Galley, is a track for me that it's a little too late. It feels like a lethargic track to me. It's still pretty good. No real complaints other than it just feels like the air is kind of let out of the balloon by the time you get to that point of the album. But the riffs, the way they transition, there's nothing that sounds, because you start getting that era of thrash or speed metal. Speed metal isn't as guilty of it as, say, thrash. Thrash, there's a lot of riff salad, a bunch of crap slopped together, and ta-da, it's a song, and you can tell. Death Row is like Deception Ignored. I love that album, but it's a riff salad record. I've listened to it a billion times, so it has become so accustomed. There's actual songs in there, but this avoids that. This steers clear of what was going on in Germany, and it's very focused, well written from start to finish. I have no problems with the composition or the musicality on here. They're great musicians, all of them. They're really crushing it on here, and it's so well put together. It's hard to deny. Let's talk about favorite. Nope. Let's talk about production. Jim.
I think it's great production on here. I mentioned, it reminds me of other early German thrash gods in that realm. It reminds me of Destruction a bit, how they lean towards the higher register, but there's a lower range here. That's definitely, I think, more to be found on this record than like in Destruction and stuff. So it's not all highs, mainly those are propelled by the vocals. So the drums sound really great. I think that the drummer's capabilities here kind of extend to his like control of his sound in the studio. Like he knows how to make sure that he either worked the board himself or worked with someone there that was able to capture like a really good warm kind of a drum sound. Double bass sounds good. It cuts through. Great. The toms are loud, and when they work together, when they hit with the bass, like I love that. Old 80s, like where the bass hits with the toms, like dur, dur, dur. I love that kind of stuff. And they do that here. To a really successful degree, and in sound and in performance. So definitely no complaints about that. The bass itself, really good, sort of like high mid tone that's always, ever present. But, we're not talking D.D. Verney here. It's more subtle than that. But it does have like a kind of like a pleasing, like kind of a rounded sound to it. It's not clanky per se, but just enough highs there where it kind of breaks through. But it really shines the best when he kind of works lockstep with the drums, which is what a bass player is supposed to do. So the sound that they kind of captured together in the studio is like, to me, like a kind of a quintessential bass drum thrash sound of the 80s, but definitely German in its presentation, not like over the top, like, New York, New Jersey thrash, but just present. Guitars are great, kind of a mid-range kind of a sound, like not too much bottom end there, but there's a lot of good definition. So and that works great when they're playing, they're kind of their scales, their note based riffs, they sound, almost kind of like Megadeth precise with how like clean they sound when they play those note based, riffs and stuff. And that's always good to hear, when you're doing something, interesting, it's good for it to kind of cut through. So good decision making there. My one complaint would be like, I think the crazy off the wall vocals are a little too loud. I would have liked for them to kind of be, pulled back a little bit. Like I said, I mean, I don't hate this album because of them, and I don't even hate the vocals, but the music here for Living Death is far more interesting to me than the vocals. Like, I get what he's doing. He's just wanting to go like, he wanted to be known like, this guy is a psycho, and something tells me that he would have been awesome to watch on stage. This is a band to look up the YouTube video. I want to see what this guy does while he's like just kind of screaming off the rails like this. But yeah, I think I like a little bit of pullback, not much, but just like a little bit would have been great. On Intruder, a lot pulled back.
Yeah.
But even that song, the riffs in that song are killer, man. There's that whole thing where the bass and the tom hits together is in there. It's got that kind of stomp bass thing that I like, where the dom 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 kind of a thing. I really like that type of stuff. So even on that song where the vocals can sort of drive you to distraction, the music and the sound of the music, that was kind of like really captured, propel the song forward and beyond. So.
All right, Kellen.
No complaints on the vocals, even on Intruder. I don't know what they're talking about over here. Okay. But I will agree that the sort of consensus that has been in the chat so far is that like the bottom end of this record is a little bit lacking. Where that I think is a success, though, is this record avoids being warm in a way that I think is beneficial to the overall sound of it. Meaning, like, I like how clean and crisp the mid-range is. All the guitar work that is happening in that mid-range, you can hear distinctly the riffs, the patterns, everything that's happening across the fretboard. I think that actually helps out the sound of this record. If it had a little more bottom end, I think it would potentially conceal a little bit of that. So for a speed metal record, it totally works for me. The part of the bottom end that I actually do think stands out, to Jim's point, tom work and kicks sound great on this record. There's something about this fully fleshed out when you hear like double bass runs on this album that I really dig. So how clean everything's going on in the mid range with all the guitar work. Vocals, to me, I don't think sound forward. I think they actually are right, like in the midst of all that busy riffing, which works. To me, that sounds like a live record or a less produced record than someone who's up front. So I think we're probably potentially listening, hearing different things based on our preferences in the vocals, right? Like the fact that I'm completely on board with them. Jim and Marty, like, turn that nonsense down, please. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I totally dig the vocals here. I don't think they dominate the mix in any way. And despite this record having a lack of sort of lower mid-range or upper bass sound to it, where you'd have potentially more bass weight, I think it provides greater clarity. And for a speed metal record, having everything sound a little bit edgy works really well. So I dig the production on this.
All right. Well, for my thoughts on this, I'm going to take one moment here, surf down to the settings. And there's a new feature called Touch Up My Appearance. I'm going to see what this does here. There, it's on now. Oh, hey.
Okay.
Oh, filtered Marty. You look 10 years younger.
This is moderate. I'm going to crank it all the way up to the maximum. Here we go. Very strong.
Oh, do some duck lips for us, Marty. Come on.
I look just like Flavio. Okay. I'm going to leave that on while I talk about this. Okay.
Let me compose myself. Hold on. I just need to get a hold of what I...
Wood of the necrophiliac. It's not the only thing with wood around here. All right. Songs. Okay. I think... let me get to the top of my list here. Horrible Infanticide. Excellent mix between the speed and the mid-paced tempos and riffs. That's one thing about this band on this album. Their dynamics, they walk the line perfectly between speed and mid. They know when to break a song up. The band somehow finds some catchy melodies in the fray. Excellent solo work. The music on the track is a great representation of what's to come on the rest of the album for sure. The vocals, as we've discussed, they sound off on their own agenda by avoiding melodic musical cues. He's in the pocket in regards to his placement of the words, but the high-end shrieking is hard to ignore, and I had a hard time getting around it. Manila Terror is another favorite, another ferocious one. Very well balanced, banger of a track. They have a very keen ear for creating songs that go somewhere and return to an established phrase. Nature's Death and Wood of Necrophiliac. They're slower tempo, but the lack of speed doesn't diminish this band's impact. Wood of Necrophiliac is the instrumental that finds minor synth tones entering the mix and a reoccurring clean guitar piece that sounds like it could have been on the first Fields of the Nephilim album. Both of them are good songs. And for me, God, I look good.
You look great.
Yeah,
hey,
great.
did you do production yet? I don't know. You did.
Shit, I thought we were on. I've been so busy with all these these new things. Production.
When you're trying to model and run a show at the same time,
You know how hard this is,
man. You know what I mean?
Let me get this back to where it was because I'm all screwed up here. I'm turning this off.
Well, I mean,
oh shit! But I'm sorry, I jumped the tracks on that. Production. I think the production is. Tim kind of mentioned earlier on he lacked some depth. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree there. I think the sound is really good. It's really consistent and solid flow. The lack of depth, it does kind of leave a unused space. There's a lot of unused space, but if you compare this to like Eternal Devastation by Destruction, which sounds like they had a recording and they dumped like acid on the tapes. I mean, it sounds like it's a Harris Johns production minus they left the bass the bass frequencies down a bit too much. It just sounds like it was recorded in Germany. And since I've already started, I'm gonna say the production is good. I'm gonna continue on with my tracks.
Continue on, please,
if you don't mind. Yeah, I've got this all screwed
back on. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
You all can do it. You all can look younger and hotter like me. Vengeance and Intruder. Many excellent palm-muted speed riffs on these songs. On Intruder, Thorsten attempts to find a key on occasion and fails. It is so bad. It's like, ooh, stick to the screaming. Don't try to sing. It's bad. The Galley is the slowest track on the album. At this late point in the album, it's feeling a bit too lethargic for me. Your standard crunch riffs do little to liven up the track. Still a good song, but War of Independence starts off with slower moments of melody. The slower intro finds Thorsten using more of a speaking voice. You can hear a definite Udo Dirkschneider influence. Then he switches between that and the shrieking and highlights even more clearly how he struggles to sing in any sort of key. Some scattered flow in this track, mostly good, but the vocals were distracting. In the Eisbein mit Sauerkraut, end of the song on a ripper, end of the album on a ripper, probably the fastest song on the album. I have no real complaints other than a few minor ones, but it doesn't tank any of these tracks. The singer tries to do it on every song for me, but not too bad. I can get by it. Jim, your thoughts on your favorite, least favorite song since I screwed this all up?
No, you're right on, man. Well, I mean, for me, Horrible, Infanticide, and Vengeance, the part one and part two. I mean, I think those are just great displays of riff writing. Uh, you know, Vengeance is more like the like a thrashier song with a wider variety of riffs. There's like electroacoustic breaks here and there. I like the Burn Forever gang vocals. And there's this weird moment 3 minutes in that sounds like power metal, and it's like this straight double bass, very melodic kind of a thing. Like, and I was like, wait, what's happening here? Like, I go back and listen to it. It's like it's only for like 30 seconds, but it's like this weird, very melodic. I was like, wait, what's happening? And then it goes away and gets more thrashy again. But it speaks to like the variety of riffs going on in the song, and Horrible Infanticide, that one has a little bit of clean vocals in it about a minute and a half in, and they're kind of like lower, almost like spoken song, and they actually sound good. I think he should have done some more of that. I think that's really cool. And I already mentioned like how the riffs kind of flow seamlessly there. Nature's Death, I like that one too. A little eco concerned thrash. I mean, that's kind of right about that era. It makes sense. Like they're going, wake up, all you nature killers. Let's get a little preached out here. I mentioned like the pinch harmonics on the verses already. That was really cool. I do. While I'm very confused by it, as we all are, I do really like this instrumental, man. What a necrophiliac. Great riffs all the way through that thing. And I think title notwithstanding, like there is like this kind of like sinister melody line that kind of connects all the riffs together. Like it stays in this kind of like, unsettling sort of like these key changes that we're not talking about black metal here, but it feels like dark, like A Night in the Wood of Necrophiliac. I make myself laugh. Okay, so our intruder, like that's where the vocals, like it's even too much for me. Like I do like the music in Intruder. I think it's great. I've already talked about that, especially the rhythm section. But man, like on the chorus, it's like he's like following the guitar, just like it's like
Sucks, dude.
it's like too much. I'm just like, yeah, that one is that one's a skipper for me. If I had the CD, I wouldn't. I don't know about that. But I really like the music though, so I know I can't say it. I mean, I might get used to it, but that's the only song where I was just like, okay, man, I wish you could tame it just a bit. But all the way through to the end, though, I think it's strong. War of Independence, and you get back to the speed metal there, and then Ice Beam and Sauerkraut. The lyrics there kind of like push like the vibe into like party thrash a little bit there. You know what I mean? Which is a little disappointing, but the riffs are really good and it's fast. It's fast and it's heavy. Like it even though like it's content is about like some what sounds like probably some pretty good food. The music itself is still super heavy, so it doesn't like close on like a bad note. I do wish it was maybe like somewhere else like earlier in the album, and one of the other just straight living death songs was a closer. Because I think that would kind of like like nail the coffin, nail it home that like, yeah, this is like, a serious, unstoppable train of thrash, but it is a powerful song. It gets in, it gets out. It's only like a couple and a half, 2.5 minutes long. So yeah, the only song on here that I don't, really like is Intruder, everything else, very killer, man, especially, the parts 1 and part 2s. I think those are great examples of like what the guys can accomplish when they are really really digging deep and and putting out their best songwriting skills. So
All right, Kellen.
So for my favorite tracks, like the Horrible Infanticide tracks, War of Independence, Manila Terror. That was kind of like where you start in terms of the sound of this band. My favorite tracks though, so Wood of Necrophiliac is the one that like stopped me in my tracks. It was like, what am I listening to? This is a little bit different. This record has personality. This band has a unique kind of style. But the other ones are, for me, the opening riff on Nature's Death. There's like the first like minute of that song I really dig. And then there's a weird sort of like when it turns into something a little bit more gallopy there's like a singular sort of guitar note that's happening over the top of it that I think is really interesting. And then we talked about the galley earlier. I really dig that middle section there. That's kind of open space, slow kind of riff with the solo and interesting kind of drum work happening underneath it. So those are the songs that, like, even though at its core to me, this is a fast record, this is a speedy record, this is an aggressive speed metal record. I think they're like the interesting sort of twist turns in their songwriting structures that do, I think, what make it stand out to me. So my least favorite track is the closer. I know it's like humor and whatever, that's a part of thrash, but I think it does not serve this album well. And they don't need to be cracking jokes. I guess like that's part of their whatever. I don't know how old they were in 1987 and just part of the scene, but I think they'd be better served as like a more aggressive speed metal band.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up with our judgment final thoughts. Jim.
Yeah, man, I think this is a great slab of German thrash. I kind of expected it. I mean, with a name like they're called Living Death. They're from Germany. It was one of those bands that I'd always heard about but never checked out. So I was actually kind of stoked that Kellen pulled it, because I'm like, okay, finally I can close the door on this and check these guys out. So I would say it didn't disappoint at all. It was a fun listen. And the more spins I got, the more I got out of it, and that's what you always want, right? You want to dig a little deeper and find little, like, in their case, like I mentioned before, like these just little flourishes of originality that gave each song a distinct color that, yeah, they fit squarely in that 87 thrash world. We're not like building new bridges here or anything, but the tweaks they made, on the sound and the style, like, really, really made it their own. And yes, the vocals do contribute to that uniqueness. As insane and off the wall as they are, I think that, we probably would be hearing even less about Living Death than we would now if it wasn't if it wasn't for this guy just completely going balls off the wall. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we would be hearing a lot more. It could go either way, but either way, I think this is a really solid record. Yeah, I'll get 8.5 on this one.
All right, Kellen.
So it's not Watchmaker. All right, I win on this one.
You win on this.
Yeah, no, it was like a cool record to discover. And as I start to amass more and more sort of speed metal albums, I'm hungry for this kind of stuff. So like last time I pulled anything like this, it was the ADX album that we covered from a while back. And yeah, every once in a while, I'd like to pull some of this speed metal stuff, because I don't think it kind of gets crossed over a little bit by thrash. So I really dig this band. Tim Baker in a speed metal band works for me. And yeah, I absolutely recommend this record for anyone who's into German thrash or just aggressive speed metal from the 1980s.
Like I said, I used to have this on vinyl. I picked it up used somewhere for cheap in a record store. I think it was a place in Kalamazoo, actually, a long time ago. I regret getting rid of it. I realize why. Listening to it now, I realize why I didn't care for it. And the vocals still remain a problem for me. And I like weird, crazy vocals, but when a guy is that far off the charts and not paying, when the music is obviously rooted in melody and the guy is avoiding those melodic cues, it's tough. It's tough. Where King Diamond, love him or hate him, at least he's singing in key with the songs mostly, So I'm giving this record a 7. I think it's a really good record. I really like the music. I just wish they had Milla from Creator singing on it. from 1987. I wish that he was singing on it, or even Schmier. I mean, if you need to have wild and crazy highs, put Schmier on this record. I mean, it's a product of Germany, and it's really excellent quality. Just kind of, they like Tim. Tim loves it. I mean, he's been going on about how he loves the singer. So, like, again, people, I don't know if there's much middle ground here. And I'm the guy that's on the singer's not great. So it's a 7 for me. It would have been higher with better vocals. Yeah, and that's it. Logan's out, and Jim is back to picking for us for next week. When Logan comes back, he'll pick next, but...
Yep, seems like only yesterday that we were ulcerating, but we'll do another, do a little bit more death metal, but this one's going to be older, so let's do some Failure for Gods, y'all.
Oh, right on.
This also happens to be my favorite hoodie.
What'd you say?
It also happens to be my favorite hoodie that I own. So Failures for Gods. Immolation.
All right. So next week, Immolation, Failures for Gods. I haven't spun that one in a while for sure. I guess to wrap up, go to Killing for Company after this is done and go check out the new video with his wife, Corinne, is up. Iwas Recordings, go check that out. Buy some cool tapes that Jim would and CDs. Jim would appreciate that. And show notes. Yeah, Friday. Big doings. We have a big doings. Lazarus came up with this idea for what is going to come of metal when all of the classic bands retire. Sort of. That's paraphrasing. There's a lot going to be going on. Kel will be joining us. Lee from Literal Lee or Heavy Art Talk will be joining us. And is there more?
No, just that's 3. So Lazarus, Lee, myself, and obviously the dynamic duo in 1080p with a 23-year-old faces will show up.
What a wonderful thing to pay for. Yeah, it's going to be a fun, interesting conversation, something we haven't done before. So should be an interesting, kind of depressing talk, but hey, we're faced with it. And the old guard is moving on. So yeah, that's it. And there's going to be a review of the new Satan album from Sue. I haven't had time to get it up this week. Hopefully I have it up on Friday. So there's that. That's it, everybody. Best chat on the Metal VC. Thank you one and all for joining us. Good turnout again tonight and putting up with our silliness. And anybody have anything to add before we go?
Eat Eisbein mit Sauerkraut.
Happy birthday to Professor Steele again.
Happy birthday, Professor Steele. Congratulations, Logan and wife.
Yep. Cheers. That's awesome. But anyway, have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you later. See you Friday.